Well, good evening, YouTubers. This is excuse me, Joe here on Thursday, August 22nd, 2013, about 6 in the evening. We're actually getting a fairly reasonable twilight evening here, and I wasn't going to do anything today. I wasn't going to make a video today. But as things happen, so then you decide you got to say stuff. I'll give you the real serious, distressing stuff first. I just got news of a fellow at church that's been up there. He and his wife started coming to church a week after I started going to that church, and I think it was the week after Easter in 1995 is when they showed up. I guess actually I started going on Palm Sunday, so I guess 2 weeks after I started going to that church. And this guy's a fellow from England. And his wife's an American, and I can't recall how they met, but in any case, he was an executive at a foundry company over in England, and this company decided they were going to expand in the United States, and they set up a plant in New Jersey. And he and his wife lived in New Jersey for a number of years, and he was very active in the Episcopal Church over in New Jersey, and that, their local church. And then when they retired, since their daughters, or two of their daughters in any case, had lived in the Central Ohio area, they moved to Delaware, Ohio, and actually they started going to the church I go to about 2 or 3 weeks after they arrived in Central Ohio. This guy's an interesting fellow. He has polycystic kidney disease, or had polycystic kidney disease, and and that comes with a sort of a host of problems. You get renal failure, you have hearing problems, and so forth. Well, he had the hearing problems and the renal failure, and when he first started coming to our church, he had already had a renal transplant. Well, after about 7 years, this thing failed, and then his daughter, one of his daughters, gave him one of her kidneys, and that basically saw him out to the end. And he had always had really good luck with this kidney transplant. Very few problems. They didn't have to adjust his meds very much, and so forth. But then he had some other problems. He had some hip replacements, and he had a knee replacement, and then he had an aortic valve. I mean, he had degenerative aortic valve problems, which a lot of people get whether they have renal disease or not. And he went into failure twice before they replaced this valve. Well, if you go into failure before you have your aortic valve replaced, that's never a good sign, guys. And so this happened last fall, and he was in rehab and so forth, the hospital and rehab, for about 3.5 months. And then they sent him home, and so, Ohio had a primary election here in March of this year. And so he went to vote, because he'd become naturalized. He was a U.S. citizen at this point. and he fell down at the polling place, and basically he was never out of institutional care after that. He effectively scalped himself, and he bunged up his knee, which had been, well, operated on about 10 months ago, and he had to reoperate on his knee. And it turns out he had another couple of problems that we weren't being told about, because in any case, after a long slog, they sent him to the rest home for rehab, and then after a long slog at the rest home, they sent him home last Saturday. So he was able to be home finally for 5 days with his wife and their dogs. And this guy was a very vigorous, I mean, his temperament was such that he did not submit readily to being ill. And wow, what a slog for him. Well, I guess this morning, while he was shaving, he more or less dropped dead. When Carol went in, he was unconscious, but he regained consciousness enough to speak to her for about 10 minutes or so, until the squad got there, and then he was unconscious again, and by the time he hit the ER, he was, dead. So there it is. I mentioned earlier maybe who's going to be number 3. I talked about the old thing about deaths come in threes. Well, we had Nick and Brad and now Richard, and I suppose if you count Bill here 4 or 5 months ago, 4 months ago, I mean, there's number 4. So I guess that betrays the old Saul on that. I was physically ill when I got to Nick. I mean, I really admired this guy, and I particularly admired his wife. She's one of the few individuals that have ever been able to more or less intellectually intimidate me, and I mean that in a good sense, in the sense that you always want to be on your toes and be at your best when you're giving her an answer to a question. They were very much in love. And she's, we've watched her take care of him and worry about him, and she was going way downhill. So, Lord, I hope she's not number 5. So we'll see. Well, meanwhile, on a lighter note, I watched the Russian spacewalk today, and it seems that the boys were going to install this part on the outside of the space station, and it seems that this thing had been machined in a mirror image, so that it would fit, but it would fit upside down, and so the most they could get, instead of having 4 holes that they could screw the thing into, they could screw it into 2 holes.
Upside down and back.
And so, yeah, but anyway, so the guy said, the one fellow said, well, we'll just tighten this thing down way tight on just the 2 holes, it'll be okay. And they said, well, and then there was a lot of toing and froing, and so they finally said, no, just put it back inside, and we'll deal with it later. Okay. So then it went on and on. About 3 hours later, they decided, well, maybe you may as well just go ahead and put the thing on with the 2 holes, and we can figure out how to work around. When the next part goes on, we can jury rig it to make it work. So they went back and did all this stuff again, and they did it the first time because this was a fairly long segment, and so it ended up taking about another half hour more than what they had planned. So, well, they got it inside, they're safe, so that's all that really matters. And oh gosh, so I I then, of course, like a moth to the flame, did some YouTube stuff here, and I downloaded a couple of full-length movies off YouTube. That's always nice. Nice to be able to do that. And I'm eating up my hard drive like a house of fire. I'm going to have to get some extra hard drive space here at some point. But well, so Paul got home safe, and they had a little, well, he had a day at work and got home safe. So that's really all that matters. And on that note, I'm going to shut up, because otherwise I'm going to get all maudlin here. So, alrighty now. Bye-bye, YouTubers.